All across the country, thousands of people have taken part in HTML 500 and HTML 150 programs from Lighthouse Labs, and it's been amazing. But we wanted to share this with even more people, so we're making this video. Now this video will give you a taste of the HTML 500 experience for those who couldn't make it to one of the in-person programs or those who could and simply wanted to get a bit of a refresher. So today you're going to learn how to build things for the web using the real tools and real languages used by professional developers. And by the end of today you'll be able to make your own great looking web pages. So hi, I'm Andrew Burke. I'm an independent software developer from Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I'm a lead mentor and trainer with Lighthouse Labs out here. And I've been a developer for over 20 years, and it's really been great. It's the main thing is I get to build things, and I can say at the end of the day, I built that, I made that change, which is a lot better than some of the other gigs I'm in where I can say, you know, well, we had a meeting and we spent the day in the meeting and well, we decided not to go ahead with the program, right? You know, coding, it really feels like I've really made impact in the world rather than simply stocking a shelf or going in a meeting and doing nothing. It's interesting work. It's work that's in demand. It's work that pays pretty well. And really importantly for me, it lets me be my own boss. And I get to do a variety of different things like training as well as programming and doing business things as well. What's really also great is I can build my own ideas, and like if I got a business idea or a startup idea or just a cultural idea of something funny I want to share with the world, I can just put it together and throw it up there as quickly as possible without having to wait for another developer to come in and do it, which is really great. So because I am the developer, right? Now the thing is, I'm self-taught. And it's taken me years and years to learn the skills that I have that I need to be able to do this kind of work, and including a whole lot of dead ends where I spent a whole lot of time learning stuff that's not even used anymore. And this is why I wish Lighthouse Labs had been around when I was getting started, because it would have saved me a huge amount of time. Lighthouse does really intensive boot camps to take you from a standing start to becoming a full stack web developer or a full-on iOS developer who is able to get hired by a startup or start doing their own projects independently. They even have their own career services department to help people, the graduates, get gigs. And their success rate is something about 95%, something like that. Really, really high success rate of getting people into actual jobs after they finish this program. Now, the main program with Lighthouse is a 2-week intensive boot camp, a 2-month intensive boot camp, 8 weeks of 12-hour days where they teach you from nothing to like a full stack. You learn database, you learn JavaScript, you learn middleware, you learn web HTML, you learn React, you learn all sorts of stuff. It's really, really amazing and really intense. And to be honest, that's not necessarily for everybody. So if you can't quite take 2 months out of your entire life and can't quite handle the 12-hour intensity, they also do a less intense twice-a-week program, evening courses, and they also do a lot of these free one-day workshops where they teach you sort of the basics of how to do HTML. Sort of like this one, sort of like the HTML 500, and they also just do other ones ongoing every few months in various places. So check the website and see if there's one near you, and if you're in the Halifax area and you take one of the Halifax ones, I'll probably be teaching that, so make sure to come and say hi. So today, in this video, we're going to get a little taste of how Lighthouse Labs works. So there's a bunch of different parts, and we'll cover the basics of HTML and CSS, and also how to use templates to sort of get a jump start on things, and then you're actually going to spend some time working on projects. Now, today we won't be able to make you a full stack web developer, but we will be teaching you the basics of HTML and CSS in the Lighthouse Labs way. Now, in the real HTML 500 class, the lecture is just the first part of things. The real learning happens afterwards when you work on assignments and things like that with help from mentors. Now, the mentors are one of the key elements of the Lighthouse Labs experience. You know, when I was teaching myself, I was just teaching myself by myself, and I kept getting stuck on things, and it's really frustrating. You often end up just giving up on something because you're really stuck. Well, with the mentors, these are experienced web developers who've been there and done that for basically anything that you might end up coming up with. So usually it's about 4 students per mentor, roughly, and so the mentors are able to, if you get stuck on something, the mentors are right there to help you push through to the next level, which is really great, and it really helps speed up the learning process and really helps you focus on achievement rather than frustration, which is really important. Now, obviously, we can't do the mentor or full mentor approach here in a web video, but check the website that's attached to this video because we're thinking of various different ways to try to recreate that mentor experience a little bit even though it's a web-based thing and it isn't quite as interactive. But if you do get the chance to do one of these Lighthouse Labs programs in person, definitely check them out. They're a huge blast. It only takes a few hours out of usually a weekend or an evening. It's really, really fun. Bring friends, actually. There's a lot of people really enjoy doing these things together. You can really, really have a great time. So, quick intro to web development. I often consider web development as a little bit like playing guitar. You know, there's a lot of instruments out there that are really difficult, like the violin, the French horn, which are really difficult to just be able to make a decent sound on. You know, it takes a lot of work just to make a sound. If you've ever had to share an apartment with someone who's learning how to play the violin, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But anyway, what's nice with you know, the guitar is that you can learn a few basic chords: D, G, A, E, etc., and a few minor chords and things, and take a little bit of practice to build up some finger strength, and you can play basically half the songs out there on the charts right now are basically built with these simple chords. And web development is a little bit like that. You know, you can learn some basic simple chords, some basic simple elements, and that's enough to actually make an impact and build real web pages and get stuff out there. Now, on the flip side, if you want to get really, really good at guitar, the sky's the limit. There's amazing players who are doing amazing stuff, and it can take years of practice and dedication to become, and talent to become really, really good. And on the left, that's me as a teenager, and on the right, that's Kaki King, who's this amazing guitarist. If once you're finished with this, you should flip over to YouTube and check out and see some of her videos, because it's just some amazing stuff you've never seen before. So Kaki King there is doing sort of the guitar equivalent of building her own custom JavaScript framework with real-time animations and back-end data binding and stuff like that. But we're not going to get into that today. But you know, the sky's the limit. Once you've built the foundations, you've learned a few chords, maybe you want to try a bit more. There's lots more you can try, and it makes it a really interesting thing to start learning. And you're never going to run out of cool things to learn. But for today, we're just going to learn the basic chords for web development. And by the time we're done today, you'll be ready for that campfire sing-along and that house party where you can play along and everyone can sing along with your songs. So, are you ready to start? We're going to get started right now, and this is going to be awesome. So let's get started right away with some HTML. Okay, HTML. It's the basics for what makes a web page. And what makes a web page? Well, a web page is simply a plain text file. That's right, just plain text that ends with .html, that has a bunch of content in it, basically text, that's decorated with various tags that describe that content in various ways. And then also has maybe, sometimes, not always, a bunch of related files attached to it nearby. There's sort of links inside that to go to other pages, or they give you extra information about styling or extra images and things like that. So that's all a web page basically is. It's a file, plain text file with a special thing at the end of the name and a bunch of special content. Now, just want to go back a bit to underline one fact. HTML files are simply plain text. I know they look magical and everything, but they don't have a fancy builder. They don't have, you know, if you think of Microsoft Word, it's all sorts of formatting and everything, and the file itself is kind of opaque. If you open it with the wrong program, it's just a bunch of gobbledygook. HTML files are simply plain text. You can look at them with Notepad in Windows or text edited in Macintosh. They just open right up and you can just see all the stuff in there. They're plain text, which makes them really easy to manage, really easy to work with. They're generally small and efficient things to move around and manage and do stuff with. And you can edit them in all sorts of different programs. Now, one of the things you're going to do as you get into programming is you're going to get really familiar with text editors. Now, a text editor is, you know how Microsoft Word takes all this extra energy for things like as you're typing, it automatically corrects your stuff, and there's fancy layout and you know, weird color things you can do with your words and mail merge and all that kind of stuff, right? Plain text editors use up the same amount of power as something like Microsoft Word, but they devote all of it to helping you code. So it'll autocomplete, it'll suggest what code you might want to write in, it'll automatically color the code as you're writing it, it'll sometimes check it to make sure it works as you go, it helps you find files and everything. So as you get to become a programmer, it's really good to get used to a certain, get used to good text editors. There's a lot of them out there, a lot of different kinds, but what's great is most of them are free or really inexpensive, or there's a free trial version you can use for a long time and work later. So a bunch of them out there. Atom is a really popular one right now. Notepad++ on Windows, which is like Notepad but sort of on steroids. BBEdit's a really good one for the Mac. Emacs and Vim are two of the really hardcore ones for heavy-duty programmers. I spend most of my time using a program called Emacs, which has a bit of a learning curve. We're not going to use that today, but it's really, really awesome. It does everything. And what we're going to use is Sublime Text. That's one of the most popular ones for programming for developers and stuff like that. And it's available for Windows, Macintosh, and Linux. And it's really, really good. And you can just get it, and it's really great. So that's what we're going to be using today. And it should work more or less the same for everybody on everybody's computers. So let's get dug in and let's make ourselves a page. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to open up Sublime Text. Whoops. And I'm going to open a new file. And there it is. See my beautiful picture of the Halifax waterfront there. And go over to here, and this is our new file. And I'm going to save it and give it a name. It's a file that's got nothing in it, and I'm going to call it, oops, hello HTML. Okay, so it's now a file with HTML in the name. And I say hello, and just writing in that. And then I'm going to go over to Chrome. Here's my browser. And I'm going to go File, Open File. I'm going to find that file. It's in this hello folder. Go Open. There we go. So you can see there's the file. I'm going to make this a bit smaller so you see them side by side. So here's the file that I just wrote. Hello, and here's the file that I just opened up. Now, the nice thing with browsers, you don't have to necessarily open files on the internet. You can actually open files that are just on your local computer. And here's what we did. We just did file open just as if we were in a word processing program, and we opened the local file that we're playing with. So you can see this is a great way you can develop things really quickly by just working with the files on your computer. So I write some more content, and then I go save. So that's File, Save. Command S or Control S if you're on Windows. So I'm going to be using the shortcut in the keyboard from here on in just for speed, but you'll see it's under File, Save. Okay, so I just saved the new file. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to reload. And you can see there, it says, hello, I'm learning how to write HTML. I'll make this a little bigger for everyone so you can see. So there you go. There's more content. And so basically all you do is you go in and take some stuff. And they make a change, and then you go over to here and you reload. So Command R gives you, Control R gives you reload. So you can see here, learning how to write, I'm learning how to live Lighthouse Lab. So you just go back and forth and back and forth. And this is really great because there's a really fast feedback loop, right? You write some stuff and you can immediately see what changed and how it looks and whether it worked or not. This is one of the great things about learning how to program the web, because you can do almost all of it locally really, really quickly. There's none of this like hitting compile and then going away for a coffee while the whole computer, builds your entire system and deploys it. It's really quick and easy and really fast and powerful, and it's a great way to learn because you can make a change and immediately get the feedback on whether it worked or not and how it looked. And this is one of the key things and why learning the web is one of the best ways to get into programming. Once you start with this, if you enjoy this, there's a lot more other things you can learn and enjoy. So there you go. There's a basic page. Now you notice a bunch of things. There's no fancy formatting. Everything's all munged onto one line, even though they're on separate lines here. There's no actual tags. It's just text. So this isn't really a web page yet. We need to add some extra stuff to it. And this is what we're going to do next. We're going to discuss HTML elements. Now, web pages have different elements. So there's paragraphs, headers, footers, formatted text, fields, etc. And these are all defined using tags. Tags are the basic element in HTML. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Hyper means it uses links to go between documents. So you have a document with a link on it, you click on the link, it goes to another document. So that's like going from hyperspace from one place to another. Text means it's plain text, right? Markup means it's plain text that's got stuff in it to mark up that text to make it sort of significant. So that's what tags are. Those are the elements, those are the things that mark up the text. And language just means it's a language. So it's a set of tags that follow a certain format that make it an actual language you can work with. And that's basically it. So this is plain text. The tags are also plain text. They just don't show up on the page, but they influence what shows up on the page. So here's how a tag works. Tags are simply text put into little triangular brackets. Now, triangular brackets are, if you remember from math class in grade school, don't worry, we're not going to actually do any math today, but if you remember from math class, the greater than and less than symbols, they're just above the comma and the period in the bottom right corner of your keyboard. It uses shift and comma, shift and period. That's what they are. So they're basically triangular brackets around a little piece of text, and that piece of text is the tag. So bracket P is the starting of the opening tag, and then you have a bunch of stuff that's basically influenced by that tag. So in this case, we have I'm writing HTML, and then you have a closing tag, which is /p. So the slash means, it's basically exactly like the opening tag, but it's got the slash in it, which means we're done. So opening means you're starting, closing /p means we're finished. And everything between the tag and the slash tag is impacted by that tag, is defined by that. So I'm writing HTML is inside a p tag. Okay? That's the basics of how tags work. So now you can start doing some basic layout tags. So for example, here we have I'm writing HTML with a p tag. The p tag means this is a paragraph. So this says this is a bunch of text that's a paragraph. And usually that means it's on its own line or several lines, depending on how much text you've got. And it's got a space at the top and a space at the bottom to sort of space out the paragraphs. Right? Next thing, there's a line break. If you want to just not have all the extra spaces like a paragraph break, you can stick line breaks in wherever you want. And that's using just BR as a tag. Now, BR is a little different than P. It's a standalone tag, which means it doesn't necessarily have a closer. It's not like you have BR and then /BR, because it's just saying put a break here. Now, sometimes if people just put the BR without the slash, I like to put the slash at the end. Different people have different ways. It's one way, they both work. HTML, there's many ways to do things. There's different standards that all sort of glom on top of each other. I like to put the slash in just so I know that this is actually being closed. I like to do that. You'll see that here. It isn't necessarily necessary, but I like to do that. So anyway, line 1, line 2, those will put them on separate lines. So let me show you. Let's put this and update our little file here. So here is our file, and if we take these, we put these in. Now you notice I'm typing, the colors start to change because the text editor is being helpful and letting me know. So you see tags, it puts them in pink rather than white. White is for regular text. Tag content is pink. And you notice also, I'm going to do this again, I open the tag, I hit the slash, and the text editor was smart enough to go back and see what tag I just opened earlier and automatically close it for me. So I don't have to guess. One of the biggest complicated things when you're writing HTML is it's easy to get confused about which tag, what was the most recent tag you opened and which ones do you need to close. The text editor helps us here by automatically guessing and helping us with that. So then we go to this, and I go to here, and I've got 3, there we go, and I'm gonna do this, and okay, so now you can see we've got paragraph around hello, another paragraph around I'm learning to write HTML, another paragraph around I'm learning HTML with Lighthouse Labs, and we have a little BR in the middle of all that. So let's see what this looks like when we reload. Bang, you see how that works? Much better. We got some fancy formatting going on. These are now in their own lines, and this one even has a line break right here in between. So you can see this is how this works. There's p tags. You'll be using p tags all day long, all the time in your stuff, and BR is really handy as well. So that's the basics of simple layout. So, but before we get any further, that's sort of not really an HTML file yet, because it doesn't have all sorts of extra context that helps you really define this as an HTML file. We need a few more things, and this is the standard for everything that you need for any HTML file. This is a standard skeleton for a page. So the first line is something that's magic words that say doc type HTML. This is just a way to help browsers and other systems recognize that this is a web page and what kind of language it's using. Just put that in there. Don't worry what it actually means. It's just it's a technical thing. After that, you have an HTML tag and a /HTML tag at the bottom. So everything in between those is going to be defined as HTML. So you can see there. And then there's underneath that, inside that, you've got head, which is a head tag. This is a section of the page that doesn't show up on the page, but it's full of information like the title, which shows up in like the history, links to other files like JavaScript or CSS, any extra information that might help search engines figure out what's going on with the system, what this page is, et cetera, et cetera. All sorts of extra stuff that shows up all in the head. None of that shows up on the page. Then you have the body, and in between the two body tags, that's all the stuff that actually shows up on your web page and in the browser. So let's make our little file here more exact. So I'm going to go over to here and doc type HTML, and then over here HTML, and I'm going to go down here. One of the things that's really useful to do, I've learned this over the years from hard experience, is that as soon as you open a tag, you want to go and immediately close it at the end, because otherwise if you don't close it, you'll forget to close it, and then if you leave tags unclosed, weird things can happen. Just so you know. So if I go then I do a head and slash head, and I want to do title, hello world. Okay, and then I go body. Oops. There we go. Body. Now let's see. I've saved that, and I'm going to reload this. Okay, not that different, but there's a bit of extra space. But you can also see here that the title of the tab now says Hello World, which is what I put up here in the title. This doesn't show up on the page, but it shows up on the browser thing. And if I look at the browser history and stuff, it would show that as well. So I'm going to change that exclamation point. And you can see there we now got an exclamation point. A little tiny detail there, but that's the kind of thing that happens in the head section. So here's a quick thing I'll show you since we've got everything set up here. If I forgot to close the title tag, remember I was talking about how important it is to close the tags as soon as you open them because it's really easy to lose track and forget. So if I didn't close the title tag, now the browser is going to think everything is within the title, which is going to be weird. So if I reload, the whole page is empty. Oh my goodness. And I guarantee you this will probably happen to you at some point today or sometime in the next little while. You're working on something, you make some change, suddenly your entire document is gone or half the document is gone. The best thing to do is look for your tags, see what's going on with your tags, make sure that you've closed everything you've opened. And if you're using Sublime Text, just put slash in, and it will automatically close any unopened tag that you may have left open by mistake. So let's save that and reload. Now we are back to where we were. Okay. So let's get back to our slides here. And okay, a few more things that are handy. If you want to sort of provide emphasis for text, you don't have to, within a paragraph, you can do some more stuff. So here, for example, you can put EM means emphasis. Usually that means it's in italics, but not always, but most of the time. And strong is even more emphasis. It actually makes it usually bold. So these are ways to highlight certain chunks of text. So writing about my favorite place in Halifax, the New Public Library, which if you ever get to Halifax, you totally check it out. It's an amazing building. So let's go to the next one. So headings. You can provide headings, just like, once again, in Microsoft Word and things like that. You can provide several levels of hierarchy of heading, I think from H1 all the way down to H6, I think. I usually only get down to H3 or 4, usually myself. But you can see here we have H1. Okay, that means it's a top level, and you can see the examples below what that looks like. And that's usually like the the title of a book or a title of an essay. H2 would be, say, chapters. H3 would be subsection headings, for example, or whatever. So these are the standard ways you can sort of get this hierarchy of things, which is a really handy way. And by default, they sort of look at this certain way with large bold and then smaller bold and smaller bold, eventually down to italics and things. But this is stuff that you can change later with CSS, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So I'm just going to put some more formatting into our file here so that we actually have something kind of cooler looking. So let's see, let's make this H1. H1. Okay, I'm going to write EM. Gonna change this sentence a bit because it makes more sense. Because now we are actually writing a web page. And relational with, oops. And it's easy to get a little confused when you get over a line break here like this. Here we go, Lighthouse Labs. Okay, so I've added some extra formatting. We put this in H1. We put the paragraph stuff with some extra EMs and strong. So let's save that and let's reload here and see what we got. There's our heading. There's a sentence. Oops. There we go. There's an error. You see I had 2 slashes. I closed twice for some reason. So let's save that again. Reload. There we go. That's better. So you can see there italics shows up, and here you can see this is in bold. So simple formatting, simple way to bring a little life to your text. And here's our big H1 that's at the top. I'm going to shrink this down slightly so it takes up a bit less space. So there you go. You can see how these are all fitting together, right? So let's go back to this. All right. So that's basics of tags. Those are the simple standard tags you can use. Now tags can also be a bit more sophisticated. You can add things like attributes to tags. So you can see there's not just a P, but a P with a bunch of extra stuff in. And attributes are a bunch of the name of the attribute equals, and then the value of the attribute. So in this case, we're changing something called the class of an attribute and giving it a title like a piece of text called lead or whatever, depending on what we want to do. And then anything within that is impacted by not only the tag, but the attributes. Now, this is an example here, it's pretty basic, but for example, if you want to do links, which is sort of a magical part of HTML, the original thing that was really awesome about HTML, and it's the H and the HT inside HTML, the name, this is what it's about. If you do a link, it's a special tag called an A tag, which means anchor, which means we're going to take this part of text and make it something special, and it's got an attribute called href, which means hyperref, which means this is going to be a hyperspace link that's going to go to somewhere else. And then the value of that attribute, which in this case is http google.com, means the text is in between the A and the /A is impacted by that site, by that tag, and means when you click on it, it'll go to google.com, for example. Okay. And the other magical tag that has attributes is image. Okay, so image gives us cat pictures, which is the real important reason that the web's around at all, right? And that's one of these standalone tags, because of course it doesn't really finish. It doesn't have extra content inside it. It's just an image. So image, source, src is source, and then it's basically the file name of the file that you're trying to get to. Now this could be a local file, it could be a file somewhere on the web, which would include the whole URL into it. And then you just close the tag with a slash or not, depending on how you feel. So there you go, that's image tag with an attribute, and we have the href tag. So I am going to show you how that works on our little file here with Lighthouse Labs. I'm going to change this strong to an ahref equals lighthouselabs.com. And then go over here, and I go like this, and let's see what happens. Now this is a link, and there we go. It goes to the web page for Lighthouse Labs. Okay, so that was really easy. Now I'm going to go back to our page, but you see now we've added a link that goes out to that site. Really, really simple. There we go. So that's how a link works, and we could do image tags and everything else like that as well. Same basic idea. We just put all this stuff into our content, into our page. This is a tag with an attribute. If I wanted this to go somewhere else, I could go to google.ca. We'll keep the name the same. Let's reload. Okay, let's go this. Google. Okay, little piece of cake. So I'm going to go back to Lighthouse Labs. lighthouselabs.ca. There we go. Okay, so there you go. That's basically how simple attribute tags work and links. So now you can build a website with links on it. Okay, so a few more pieces of HTML that might be useful before we get further along. So lists, HTML is really good for building, it used to be used for documents, or it was originally designed to use for documents. It's got lots of handy things for documents. For example, lists. So bullet lists are called unordered lists, and they use UL as the tag. So UL and then /UL at the bottom for anything inside that ends up turning into a list. And then you have OL, and /OL is an ordered list, which is numbered. And each item inside the list has LI as part of the, as the beginning and the end of each item. And so anything that's wrapped up in LI will show up as a bullet item in the list. And that means it'll be indented a little bit and it'll have a bullet, right? And same thing with the ordered list, anything with LI will have a number in the front. Now what's nice with this is you can rearrange all your elements and the browser will do the numbering for you. So it's kind of handy, you don't have to go manually change all the numbers, which is great. You can also put attributes, we don't have time for that, but you can look this up, in the UL and OL to specify the kinds of bullets, or no bullets at all, diamonds or checkboxes or whatever. And the ordered list, you can even specify them to be in Roman numerals or in letters or uppercase or lowercase or all sorts of different things to sort of help you organize your lists. And you can have lists inside lists if you want to do like a big legal document or something like that. This is used certainly to make lists and stuff, but you'll find especially unordered lists all over the place in special pages. A lot of the web is using them for like nav bars or drop-down menus will often be implemented as lists with special formatting attached to them. So it's good to know these as you're looking around at other websites. Now there are also tags that don't actually do much of a layout change, but they're a way of containing things. So these are sort of blank containers for content that helps you sort of separate them and keep them classified in certain ways, but they sort of don't do anything themselves. Like p tags will automatically add spacing above and below. If you don't want to necessarily make spacing that way, you can put things in a div tag. So a div means just a division, so a section of the page. And so here we have div, this is the first section, div, this is the second section. And then you can assign different attributes. So we'll talk about class and ID very shortly, but here you can say this is a class section and it's got its own unique ID. So divs is about, giving you sort of placeholder content that you can then define yourself the types of things that those are. This is really handy. If you start looking at other web pages, you'll notice a lot of pages just use tons of divs everywhere with their own special IDs and classes all over the place. Quickly, one thing while we're talking about that, you'll notice if you're looking around on the web, the best way to learn how to do HTML, if you want to see lots of examples, is if you go to your browser and you go into the View menu, and you go View, or actually, where did it go? Developer, View Source. Okay, this will now show you the source for any page. So any page you look at will show that. So if we go to google.com, or let's go to Lighthouse Labs, follow that link. Oh, it's still going to Google. Forgot to save. Let's save that and go back and reload. Now we're at Lighthouse Labs. Okay, we can still go View, Developer, View Source. Now this page will be a little bit more complex. It's got a bunch of data crap on it, but when you get it further down, you'll see here's a whole bunch of HTML, and you can see here there's a whole bunch of divs, right? Div, 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 div. But this is a great way to learn. If you're seeing something on a web page, you view source and you can find out how they did it. It's sort of like secretly looking behind the curtain at a play and seeing how the set's been built. And it's a really, really handy way to learn. Once you've learned up a few basics, like after this class, you'll have enough basics that you can do view source, and you can sort of understand what's going on in there. But we'll get to that in a minute. All right, so let's go back and go back to our things. So we had div tags. And what happened is everyone, as we saw, starts doing their own div tags with their own classes and IDs for defining things. And that made it really difficult for browsers and things to use all sorts of, to identify what's going on in a page, because every page has its own language, right? Its own sets of tags. So what's happened in the last few years is people have come up with semantic tags, which are standard ways to express standard stuff that happens in a modern document. Your originally HTML just had like block quotes and lists, but now we have things like article, and header, and footer, and section, and things like that. So these are actually tags that help you define a page in a more sort of abstract, conceptual way to help define things. And there's a whole bunch of these, and once again, they'll be in your handout, the reference file that we've got attached to this class, as well as look on the web, just do a search for HTML semantic tags, and you get the whole list somewhere. And this is really handy. It's better. People are beginning to use these a lot more than just plain divs with their own sort of names, because you can be much more consistent and clean. And search engines are much better at searching through these to understand what's going on and everything. Now, a quick note while we're here, and we've already seen a little bit of this already. But as you noticed at the very beginning, when we just wrote a bunch of sentences on the page, and then when we loaded the page, it just glommed them all together in one line. That's because HTML ignores white space. It ignores new lines and white space in your text file. It simply ignores them and only uses tags to show what's actually going on, which means that you can indent things as much as you want to make it more readable for you. The computer doesn't care what it says, but it's much easier, especially because the whole essence of HTML is that there's stuff inside other stuff inside other stuff, right? So you want to be able to know what's inside what, so it's easier to tell what's going on, because with tags, opening and closing, and all sorts of layers of complexity, it's really easy to get lost. So use indentation to help you figure out what's going on. So let's go back to our file and let's properly indent things. Now what's nice is you can also, if you just drag over everything, go under Edit, Line, Reindent, Sublime Text will actually help you out with indenting all by itself. So you reindent, and there you can see it's actually indented everything inside the body tag. Now if we wanted to, we could indent everything inside the HTML, but usually these top level ones are all sort of not that super important. But this way, at least now we know that all these things are within the body tag. And if we had other tags of different kinds, so for example, if we had main, which is where we did header, right? And then made this main. Okay, we might want to do this and do our own indenting to make sure. That's fine, we can do that. Or we can actually ask, once again, our Sublime Text to do it for us. So it's kind of handy we have computers to help us. Why not let them help us? So there we've now put a header and main. Now that doesn't actually change the file much, but at least it helps us structure and understand what's inside what, which is really, really important for keeping your sanity as you start to work on more and more complex HTML files. And you'll notice this around as you look at stuff on the web. Okay, so indentation is important. Keep track of that. So here's our first page, and I fleshed it all out, and you can see there's a version of it that I basically did. And once again, you make some changes, reload, make some changes, reload, make some changes, reload. And if you really want another nice thing that's handy, I'll just quickly show you. Once you've indented stuff and you've got tags and content, you'll see here a little triangle show up. If you've got more than one line in something, and you put it in the margin, little triangle show up. This lets you collapse the content down so you can ignore stuff that you're not using. So if you're working on the header, you can actually collapse down the main section so it doesn't bother you and get in the way. And this is handy when you, once again, when you get really complex pages, it sort of leverages the indentation to help you keep track of what's going on. So just keep that in mind as another note. So there we go. That's the very basics of HTML. So to be honest, with what we've just learned in the last few minutes, you would be ready to get a job in 1995 at a fancy startup.com, just like this guy. You'd be ready with your Pentium 100 computer and your CD-ROMs and your multimedia disks. So next up, CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And these are separate files that describe the formatting for an HTML page. And what's cool is that the styling information, colors, etc., and all that is separated from the HTML. So you can have the same HTML with different CSS will look completely different. For a good example of that, there's a really cool website you should check out. You could lose a whole afternoon to it, called the CSS Zen Garden. You can just do a search for it, but it's csszengarden.com. And what they've done is they made one simple HTML file with standard tags and everything. And then people have been submitting hundreds now. It's been around for a long time. People have submitted hundreds of CSS files that then mark up this simple HTML file and make these amazing things. You see 4 examples here on the screen. These are all using exactly the same HTML file with completely different looks, as you can tell, because of the different CSS that they brought in, as well as background colors and special fonts and stuff like that. So, but it's really amazing. You can see how much can be done to a simple CSS file, a simple HTML file, simply by using CSS. It's a really great way to lose an entire amount of time, but it's a really great way to find out how things are done and what you can do with CSS. It's really awesome. So if you think about, like earlier, if HTML is like playing guitar, CSS is sort of like the effects pedals. And once again, you can take some really simple guitar playing, like the kind of guitar I can play, but you add enough, fuzz effects and echo and reverb and everything, it can make it sound really, really good. Just like a very simple HTML file, you put the right CSS on top, it can make it look really professional and really slick. And so how do you think about CSS? So HTML defines the structure and the elements on the web page. Well, CSS defines the design of those elements. So think about a house, right? So a house has a foundation, and it has walls, and it has windows, and it has a roof, and maybe it's got HVAC in it, and maybe heating and stuff like that, and floors. And those are all structure, right? That's the HTML of the house. House also has paint, it has curtains and drapes, it has furniture, it has wallpaper, it has different floor coverings, it has cool people who live in it, etc. Right? So the structure, the HTML is the frame and the roof and everything, and the CSS is the wallpaper and the design inside. And it's easy to say, oh, that's just wallpaper, but in fact, the design, these are pages, these are designed to be, these are aesthetic things in the world that are designed to be enjoyed and appreciated by people. And so the decor is definitely as important as the structure. They both go together to make a complete whole. And so CSS and HTML are 2 halves of the same coin that go together to make an effective web page. So CSS, how do we actually do it? So applying style to an element, to something on a web page, is a 2-step process. You have to target something. So you target the element on the page, or a set of elements or types of elements. And then once you've selected that target, you then apply styles to that target. And the target can be any number of things. We'll see that in a minute. But the properties can be anything like color, font size, font format, text alignment, centering, whether they've got margins, padding, underlines, also borders, etc. All these different things are applied to the particular things that you've targeted. So this works by basically a CSS file as a whole list of these rules, okay? And the rules are defined like we see on the screen here. It's a whole bunch of these rules all next to each other. And the rules are pretty simple. So you have a selector at the beginning, and then you have squiggly brackets, and then you have a series of values assigned to properties. So for header, so anything that's got the header tag in this example is going to have the color is going to be green, and the text is going to be center aligned, right? So we take the color attribute and make it green, and the text align attribute and make it center. So anything in header is going to be centered in green. Here's another example. You can see this in more detail. So CSS uses curly brackets. Now those are, as you get using programming, you end up getting to know all the brackets and all the different types because everyone's got their slightly different versions of brackets. The brackets are still on the right side of the keyboard, but they're further up. So they're just underneath the number row at the far right. They're just above the square brackets. There's a squiggly bracket. So we shift square brackets to get your squiggly brackets. So once again, selector, open bracket, close bracket, stuff in between. Notice you don't use equals and don't put quote marks around things. You just do whatever, the property, colon, and then the value. Same thing, so text align, center, color, green. You finish it with semicolons. Number one problem I always have when I was starting with CSS, and a lot of people have when they're getting going, is you got to make sure to put semicolons in. If you don't put the semicolons in, things get all weird. So, and it's easy to forget semicolons, so don't forget your semicolons. Now, usually it's nice and cleaner to put everything on one line, but you can put them all in separate lines, but you can put them all on one line if you really feel like it. Here's a second example. We have EM. Once again, we're targeting all the EMs on the page, and we're making them blue and large, for example. You can see there. And basically, a CSS file is a whole collection of these rules. And the rules can get pretty complex, and they can sort of collide with each other and stuff, but very simple ones, it's pretty straightforward, and you can see what happens here. So how do we actually link style sheets? So this is where that head section of the page, or title in the head section. Here's some more useful things for the head section. So you basically put these magic words in: link rel equals style sheet, href equals, and then whatever the name of the style sheet is. So usually the style sheet's going to be in the same directory as your file. So you just give it the name and stick it in there, and that's how you get your style sheet attached to the page. So there's some more use for the head section. So let's show you how that works. So here is my page, right? So we got there. I'm going to make a styles.css, so it's a new file. I'm going to file new, and then I'm going to save it, and I'm going to call it styles.css. And then I'm going to give it some information. So we can say, let's say body. So everything in the body tag, as in everything in the web page, is going to have this attributes attached to it. So font, family. And there's tons and tons of different CSS things. And your text editor knows all of them. And it's able to, as you type, it's able to help you out by suggesting things. So as you're learning, don't be afraid to just try some of these things and see what they do. But for now, let's keep it simple. So font, family. And if you're typing and it's suggesting things, just hit tab and it'll autocomplete for you. And we even put the colon in for you, which is kind of handy. So then you can say Helvetica, Arial, sans serif. So what you do, and then semicolon, don't forget the semicolon. So what this is because fonts can be, you don't know what the computer is that the person's going to be using. Not every computer has every kind of font. So what you end up doing is you specify the most special, the font you'd really love, and if you don't have that font, you're going to try another font. If you don't have that font, we'll try another font. And eventually you have a default to like sans serif or serif, which is usually pretty basic. So we've just changed the font, okay? Let's maybe say font size 22 pixels, and maybe make background color dark gray. You'll notice if it's a valid value, it'll turn it blue when you finish typing in something that matches. So I had gray, and that works. Dark gray. Oops. See, I misspelled it. It didn't work. It turns blue, so you can. That way you know. Once again, the text editor is helping you. It's sort of like spell correction in Microsoft Word. Same idea. And then maybe color white. So I've saved that. Now, nothing's happened when I reload here yet because we haven't actually attached or linked the style sheet. So now we go into our head and we go link rel equals style sheet, href equals styles.css. Okay, so now we've added the link rel. And now if we save this and then reload the page, check it out. See how different that is, right? It's white text in Helvetica or some kind of sans serif on top of a gray background. You see, and if we remove this, let's go delete that, and then reload again, bang, we're back to our like boring black on white. And let's undo and save that again and come back, and you see there we are. So you can see how quickly and easily you can change these things. And once again, we're back to this cycle. So let's say EM. It would be font weight bold, and then maybe let's, whoops. It's a good idea to leave them on each their own line. Color green. So let's reload. Now our M is bold and italic and green. And strong, let's make this color red. Oh, we don't have strong anymore because we turned it into a link. So let's take this off and make this just strong again. Okay, there we go. See, it's nice big red, and here's green, and it's all, you can see as we're making changes, we can immediately see how they apply. So H1, for example, let's make this color blue. Now, this is getting a little carried away. I would recommend, this is a bit like the first time you were able to use fonts on a word processor, you used all the fonts, maybe when you were a kid. Similar thing on web pages. It's really tempting to use all the colors and all the styles. Be careful with that. It's probably a good idea to pick two or three, maybe even one simple colors and simple styles and stick with those all the way across. But just to show how the different colors work, I'm just showing you here. But you probably want to hold back and not get too carried away with your color choices all the time. So for example, if we liked red, if we like this blue here, let's keep blue for this one as well. So we'll keep red as a highlight, but you can see now we've got blue in different places. So there we have our example. Okay, so let's get back to our slides. Here's another way. So now we showed you how to identify sort of tags on the page, but we can get much fancier, right? So you can actually target specific elements on the page. Like you've got a whole bunch of paragraphs. Maybe you want to highlight one particular paragraph, like the welcome paragraph or something like that. Well, this is where that ID attribute comes in. So so that attribute is called ID. So here, for example, PID equals welcome. Welcome to my page. That says this paragraph has an ID of welcome. And then in CSS, we can target just that specific paragraph by using the number sign. So number sign in front means the thing with this ID. So number sign welcome, and we can make it bigger or indented or something like that. So let me show you how that works here. So if we have on our page, let me see. Let's say we have a little intro paragraph here. So we call it ID equals intro. Now, right now, that doesn't do anything. But if we come down here and do intro, and maybe make it, let's see what we would like to do. Maybe make it margin left 40 pixels, font size 120%. Let's see what that does. Okay. Font, oops. I think style italic. Okay, see that? We're making it bigger and maybe make it 140% so it's more obvious. Okay, so you can see there, what am I doing today? Question mark. I'm making a web page. And that's because we've specified this thing called intro and its ID equals intro. You see that? So we've actually tagged this. It's ignoring all the other ones. It's just doing the thing that's called intro. And that's how it's hitting it. So that's handy. So that's a way of specifying exact things on a page using ID tags, ID attributes, and then the number sign inside things. So you can also attack or attach styling to classes of things. So give it a common name. So for example, if you have a whole bunch of pictures of cats on the page and a whole bunch of pictures of dogs, but you want to make the cat ones outlined in red or something like that, in this case, because cats are more cool, you can give also those cat pictures a class of cat, and then you can attach the styling to the cat by giving it a dot. Anything with dot means anything with the class that we're talking to will be that. So we can assign different classes to different things, and it'll be targeted by that CSS. So classes, there's multiple classes, and things can have multiple classes, and there can be multiple things with the same class on a page. Well, IDs are usually a one-off, very specific targeted thing. There's only one on the page at any given time. Another way to think about this, and the difference between class and ID, they're very similar to a lot of people, and it's difficult to wrap your head around. Think of it this way. I think about it like cars. So the class is sort of like Toyota or pickup truck or SUV or something like that. So there's many cars, because a class could be a car. Lots of things can have the class car. Lots of things can have the class Toyota. Lots of things can have the class Ford. And in fact, one thing can be a car and a Toyota and a pickup truck or a hatchback or something like that. So you can see here on the page we have car Toyota, car Ford, car Toyota again. So there's multiple ones, you can mix and match them. Well, the ID is sort of like the license plate, or even more specifically, the vehicle identification number. That's the unique identifier that targets one exact thing that's on the page. So ID equals dude, that's going to be the one thing in the world with that license plate, and the one thing on the page with that ID. So that's how these things fit together. So what can you change with CSS? So I'm going to give you an example, but our page is kind of small, so having classes might be a little bit weird. But if we do, for example, p class equals ideas, or idea, I guess is better. Come down here, class equals idea, p class equals question. What are you doing? Okay, so we've now got two things called idea and one thing called question, and they're classes, so we can attach them with idea, and we can do font, we can do color light gray. Okay, now they're kind of faded. Okay, but we notice it didn't change this, and it didn't change this, because we're only targeting the things that had idea as their class, right? Intro was specifically this one thing. Idea was these two things, and they're separate. Okay, so that's sort of the difference between class and ID. You'll get used to that as you work with it. It is one of the things that takes a bit of time to wrap your head around. So what can we change with CSS? We saw some of this. So we have font family, we have font size. You can change the colors. So you can specify by name, or you can give it these hex codes. 3 sets of identical numbers are different shades of gray. So you can go all the way from 0, which is black, all the way to 9, which is sort of a lighter gray, and then long story. So 999 is the top sort of numbers, and then it goes AAA, BBB, CCC, all the way up to F, because they're base 16. That's computers. Anyway, but try them and see what happens, and you'll see sort of different shades of gray. And then try changing the different colors, because the first one is red, the second is blue, the third is green, and you can mix and match like a color wheel. Get the hang of that. Play with it a little bit. It's kind of fun. You can also do things like margins, borders, put borders around different things, different colors, padding. So padding is a space inside so everything on the web is basically a box in HTML. Padding is inside the box, between the content inside and the border. Margin is the space outside the box, so between the box and its neighbors. And then border is the actual shape of the actual border around things. So play with that, and once again, we'll show you a bit more when we get to that. So there you go. So that is basically the heart of CSS. But knowing this much CSS already would probably get you a good job in 1998. So we're getting better. We're getting further up in the years. So you got HTML now, and you got some CSS. Let's do a bit more fancier CSS just to show you sort of how this stuff fits together a bit. So you see we have our main. I'm going to make the header and the main kind of indented a bit. I'm going to give them some special things. So main, margin left, and margin right, and background color will be white, and color, so background color is the background color of this thing, color is the color of the text or whatever on it. So we'll make that black. And let's see what happens if we reload this. So you see that we've got a box. It's kind of, the margins are kind of tight. So let's make padding If you don't specify padding at all, if you don't specify left, right, or whatever, it just makes all the padding the same. So we got padding, we got everything's now 20. But if we want to specify padding top, we can make that 10 pixels instead. See, it's tightened it a bit. So there you go, and you can see this gives us 40 across the way. Let's do that with head as well. And let's make that margin left and margin right. And padding 20 pixels. So you can see there, we've started moving things around. Let's make the background color also white. Oops, I didn't spell it, and you see the color didn't change. There we go, now it's right. Okay, background color white. So there you go, and maybe I can do a border bottom, 2 pixels thick, and you can actually specify these directly. Width, 2 pixels, border bottom color, orange, border bottom style. I'm trying to remember how this works. Border bottom color, line, solid. Oops. Solid, that's right. Keep forgetting what these are. Okay, so now we've got an orange. So that's header. And you can see sort of we separated the different elements. What am I doing today? This isn't the nicest page in the world, the most pretty, but you can sort of see how these different elements fit together and to make a page that does different things. So once again, if we take all of this away, just make it an empty page, we're back to black and white, right? But we put all this in, we've got boxes, we've got size, we've got borders, margins, all sorts of stuff like that. So interesting to see how the CSS all fits together. Okay. So next up, that's really cool, but the modern web is at a whole other level these days. The modern web should work well on a full-sized browser on a computer, on a giant screen, and it should work just as well on your phone, on a small mobile device. And ideally, you don't want to have to do separate pages for each of these. You want to have what's known as a responsive design, where as you shrink a page, this is exactly the same page from Lighthouse, on a computer and on a phone, and you can see the different sizes of everything. So, and as you shrink, you can see all the different elements sort of rearranged and everything. This is exactly the same page with different arrangement of the components based on the size. Now, you could figure out how to do that by scratch using fancy JavaScript and stuff, but thankfully people have already figured this out, and they've set up what are called frameworks. These are layout frameworks that help you arrange things on your page and have a really good looking default that looks really nice to start with already. And they get rid of a whole lot of the tricky stuff for you. So a lot of them, there's a whole bunch of them out there. Most popular are probably Bootstrap, which is actually done by Twitter, and Foundation, which is another one. I use Bootstrap on almost every project now. It's a great way to sort of add a bunch of files and suddenly everything looks a whole lot better. And once you recognize what Bootstrap looks like, you'll notice it all over the place. You'll sort of notice your favorite websites are actually using Bootstrap deep down. If HTML is like basic guitar chords and if CSS is like effects pedals, right? Frameworks like this are kind of like GarageBand. If you ever played with GarageBand, if you have a Mac or similar programs, which basically provide all sorts of backing instruments, really good production effects and everything, so that even if you're just playing your simple guitar, suddenly it sounds like $1,000,000 because you've got all this backing stuff. And you know, so and you're thinking, oh, but I'm not actually playing all the instruments. Well, if you look at most recorded music these days, a lot of it is done with production tools like that as well, especially things like hip hop and EDM, which are, there's hardly ever any actual like physically played instruments in there at all. So don't be afraid to use frameworks. That's what everyone does. That's how it works in the real world these days. So, and frameworks is one thing, but because we've got frameworks, you can also now use templates that take a lot of the stuff that's in the frameworks and already build you standard content that you'd like, that most of the time you want to actually use. So most of the time you're building sites for people or for yourself that have part of a standard bunch of types. So some of them are like your personal introduction site, your personal blog site, maybe a promotional site for something or other. And you could build that from scratch with a lot of work and everything, but there's tons of places out there that give you starting templates that you can then, instead of building things from scratch, they give you something that looks really great to start with, and then you can go in and modify it. So the rest of this class is going to show you how to use templates and modify them. And once again, this is a bit different from a lot of classes will just teach you all the basics of HTML. But really what a lot of people in the world actually do when you're doing this for a living is they've learned enough HTML to be able to look at these templates and figure out where to make the changes to make them their own. And we're going to show you some of that here. There's a bunch of advanced level tricks. We're going to go kind of fast here, but what's nice with doing it on video as opposed to being in the class, if you don't quite get what's going, you just pause it, rewind it, and I can explain it to you again. And I don't mind, I'll be here waiting for you, don't worry about it. So one of the best sites I use all the time for templates is one called Start Bootstrap, which includes Bootstrap already, all linked in and properly set up, and then he uses them to build these templates, which are they provide a bunch for sale, but they have a whole bunch of ones for free as well, which is great. So you can get a start with them, and if you really get into these designs, you can start using some of their purchased ones as well if you feel like giving them some money too. So it's startbootstrap.com, and if you go to Start Bootstrap, they have a whole bunch of free sites that you can check out, and one of them is, one of the ones I like is called Landing Page, and you can go to that page, and you can hit download, and it'll download all the files you need for a landing page. And I'll just show you, if we just get out here, if we go to here, so you can see I'm just going to make this bigger. And I'm going to go to startbootstrap.com. Okay, so here's a website. And forever free, open source, and easy to use. Here's a whole bunch of different themes. Creative, clean blog, agency, freelancer. Let's view all the themes. I have a ton of them, right? Scrolling nav, grayscale, etc., etc. So here's one called Landing Page. Hit preview and download. And it's a really nice looking page for, like, if you're doing a landing page for a project. I've actually used this exact template for professional stuff, for actual work on projects I've been working on for, I have a software as a service thing. I'm trying to build a promotional site for a particular thing. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on building the site because I had all sorts of other work I had to do. So I basically downloaded Landing Page, swapped out a bunch of the content, and turned it in my own site. Which is really handy. So you can do the live preview and you can see what this does, and here's what the page looks like. It's a pretty nice looking thing with lots of slick graphics and links that highlight and buttons that sort of roll over, have rollover effects, and a nice what's called a hero picture at the back, and it's got menus and everything, and it's really handy. So let's go back, and you can simply hit download, and we'll download it onto your computer as a zip file, and you can do things with it. So that's how that works, and I've already downloaded that, and I'm going to show you what this all looks like. So I'm just going to find it here, and so here's the folder, and basically it's got a whole bunch of CSS files already built in, a bunch of special custom fonts that are built in. It's also got images already that it's assigned. Here's the main file. It's got a bunch of JavaScript and stuff which you don't have to worry about, and it's got a bunch of other files. So basically, and I'm just going to close these, and if I go to index.html, if I double click on it, there's our landing page. You can see it's responsive. When I shrink it, it shrinks it right back down to like mobile size. If I grow it, it pulls it out. And so here is our template, our lovely template that we just downloaded. It has all the files and graphics. And if we go into our index.html and we open this with Sublime Text, I've got a lot of stuff in here. Sorry, here we go. Sublime Text. There it is. Oops. Here you can see, here's a whole bunch of stuff in the head section. You can see it's a big file, but it's all the file, and basically it's a whole bunch of HTML, which you should be able to sort of recognize here. You can see there's a name, div class, div class, div class. Here's a whole bunch of things. Here's a bunch of content. There's a UL with LIs. Remember that from back at the beginning of the class. These are all here. So with all the different content in it. And basically, what you can do is you can start going in here and start changing things to make it your own. Same thing with the CSS. Now, you probably don't want to spend a lot of time messing with the CSS. They've spent a lot of time making it nice already, so you don't really necessarily need to open this. And let's open the CSS. You can at least take a look at it. And this is nice because at least you might not want to change it too much. You might want to change the default font, for example, if you want to. But you can see here how they've done the CSS, and most of this should be obvious to you. Like, okay, .top nav, that's calling something that's got a class of top nav. Let's see where that lives. Let's see, it's probably up here. Class top nav, there you go. So you can see here, this is assigned to this, where it's got a font size of 14. lead, intro, header. These are all things, and you can like look these up over down on this side and see how they all fit together. So this is a really handy way to sort of investigate how everything fits together. Okay, so just going to go back over here and go through some of the slides, but I think a lot of this is basically explaining what I'm going to show you in person, live directly. So one thing that's really important, so let's start actually changing things. So I've got the page here. So it's landing page, a template by Start Bootstrap. Let's go and start changing things. Let's change the title. So we got to find the thing that says landing page, which is going to be a little tricky. But what's nice, because there's so much content in here, you can sort of get a sense of it maybe and look for it as you go down. But you can also go Command F, which gives you a search at the bottom. Okay, Control F gives you on the Windows. And just start typing landing page. Oh, look, it's giving me, and you can see here, it's within an H1. So that's a clue that it's probably what we actually want to use to change, because presumably this giant hero picture here is probably inside an H1. So let's change it to Hello World, and maybe change the subtitle. Look at this pretty page I made. Okay, so then we save, and let's go over here and reload, right? We're wizards. We're like web HTML gurus right now. Look at this. We've just made this amazing picture, this amazing website, and we've just started customizing our content. And let's go down here, and maybe we don't have a GitHub account. Maybe we don't have a LinkedIn account. So we can just get rid of some of these. Maybe we just want to, there we go. And let's go and change our Twitter. So Twitter now is pointing to S-Bootstrap. Let's change that to AJ Burke. Okay, and then that's my Twitter account. Let's say GitHub. I can't remember even what my GitHub is. I think it's Shin Digital. Anyway, but you can see all these things. So if I hit that, now I've got Twitter that goes to my Twitter account and my GitHub account. And there it is. It's a link. There's me. Okay. So you can see that it's very simple, and you start changing things, removing things, adding things. And what's nice, if you make a mistake, one thing to keep in mind. Modern text editors keep an undo history all the way to the last time that you opened the file. So I can undo everything just by hitting Command Z a whole bunch of times, or Control Z. Undo, 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 undo. And now we're back to where basically we were at the start. So we've made a, whoops, if we have to save, and we reload, okay, we're back to where we started. If you make some horrible mistake and it turns out you've screwed everything up and you're like, oh my God, oh my goodness, I don't know I don't, where did this, right? You can just undo until you get back to something that makes more sense, and then you can start moving forward again. So just to keep that in mind, to keep you sane. So so that's sort of how this works. And here we have 3 elements, and all of these are well noted on things. So page content, look for these comments. So anything within this kind of a little tag means it's a comment. So, and there's kind of faded out in your text editors, so you can see it more easily. So look for things like things that will say like page content that lets you know where it is, and you can sort of see the white text. The white stuff is text that shows up on the page. So special thanks to Death of the Stock Photo, who's a stock photo file company. And you can see here, and you could spend a lot of time figuring out how all this works, and actually columns and rows and stuff are a really useful thing in Bootstrap. Really handy. This is how you get that collapsible thing. We don't have time to cover that in detail now, but what's great is you can take this. So maybe I've got section B, section A. So section A has the picture on the right side, section B has a picture on the left. Let's try, I'm going to take this whole bit from here to here, and you see they've all got indentation. It says end of content A, this is a container. So you can see the indentation all the way from section A all the way down to here. Let's copy that. And let's go paste that. So I'm doing edit, copy, and edit, paste. So now I've got 2 things that are kind of the same, but I'm going to change the name. Okay, so I've got this, and I hit save, and I then reload, and bang, okay, I've made 1, I've made 2, and now it's got all the same styling and the magic look and everything, and the fancy fonts and everything, just like the other element in the page. So you see, and it still has the same picture, but we can fix that next. We'll show you that. So pictures, if you want to start customizing pictures, first you got to get pictures, and that's always a challenge, whether you can make them yourself, pull them off of your own photo library. But if you're doing something quick just for fun, if you're doing things for sale, it's a bit of a different thing. But look for Google Images and type whatever you want. So, I don't know, Star Wars. Here's a fancy picture from The Force Awakens. So let's take this. I'm going to take this. I'm going to view image. It's nice and big. I'm then going to go save image as. And I'm going to take this down. I'm going to go into my HTML500 thing. I'm going to go into this directory. And you see this thing called img. So this is the images directory. And this is where all the images for the project live. So I'm going to stick my own picture in. I'm going to name it something different. TFA, Star Wars, The Force Awakens. And I'm going to get rid of that. Let's call them JPEG. SWTFA JPEG. Okay, so that's been saved. Now what I can do is, now this is that, I'm going to replace this big hero picture in the top. So this one, and this isn't actually a picture that's a foreground thing with an image tag. This is a special one that's done in CSS because it's a big giant, big epic element. So it's what's called the hero picture, which is the big picture that runs everything. And if you do inspect element, you can sort of see where things might actually be happening. Intro header, that's probably where it is, and you can see URL equals blah, 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 blah. So let's go in and look at our style sheet for this, and that is in CSS. And we look at landing page. There's a bunch of really big CSS files for Bootstrap. Just ignore them. You don't need to see those right now. And let's go look for, okay, intro header. That's what we're looking for there, intro header. And it has a thing called background. Instead of background color, it's actually pointing to a URL. And you can see here, it's ... means go back up a directory, go back down into the image directory, and use this picture. So we're going to rename this. As long as it's in the same directory, you don't have to worry about all this back and forth. And it's called Star Wars The Force Awakens JPEG. Okay, so we're going to save that. Let's reload the page. Bang! Look at that. Okay, so that just changed everything. It just put that page in, and now we have a Star Wars page. Okay, pretty awesome. And let's call this Ultimate Star Wars Fan Page or something. Okay, so now you can see here, bang, we've now changed a bunch of the content, and it's still responsive. It shrinks down, it blows up, it makes the font bigger depending where we are, and now we're going to start changing other things. So if we want to change other content in the site, say we have this picture here, we have, and you can see here it's class image, and this is the one that says depth of stock photo. That's the first one up here. So we can look at that and say, image, iPad PNG. Let's find a different picture. Let's find a nice picture that says, I don't know, let's find something like, maybe just the logo, Star Wars. Okay. Now remember, if you're doing this for commercial purposes, you don't want to just rip things off from the website. You want to use stuff that you know you can actually use legitimately. Let's view image. Is that going to work? Yes. Let's save image as. Get back down to our image folder and call it Clone Wars JPEG. Okay, we called that Clone Wars, so we just changed this reference. Okay, and now let's go back and reload this page. Bang, you see that? Clone Wars, it showed up. Now it's already starting to turn into a Star Wars page, right? And we haven't even done too much. All we've done is found a few small elements we needed to change, and we changed them, and now it's starting to be our own page with our own stuff in it. So that's the basics of how to take a template and make it your own. And just start playing with all this stuff, and it's really, really awesome. And it's really a lot of fun because you're leveraging all this technology without having to do it all yourself, which is great. So that's a whirlwind tour of HTML, CSS, and templates, and how to make your own cool content. So now it's your turn. We're going to take a break, get some coffee or whatever, maybe have a nap, come back, I'll be waiting here, and we'll get to do some hands-on learning, right? So these are some assignments to do. And what I'm probably going to try to do is, there might be another video I'm going to try to make that'll show me doing the assignment as well. Basically, project one, there'll be two assignments. Project one, if you remember a while ago there was a hashtag 7 favorite films. Make a list of your 7 favorite films. Okay, so you don't have to have the hashtag, but you whatever. But this is, start from scratch, from a blank file. Make a new file called 7favoritefilms.html and add a CSS file and write up a list of your favorite films. So make a web page with your 7 favorite films, include a header and a footer and sections. So in your header could be maybe underlined at the bottom. The footer could have really small text and fine print, and maybe have different sections, a section for each film. Put in a link to the IMDb page for that film or the Wikipedia page for that film if you want. And then link a CSS file and start styling the page. Think about how you want to actually style this page. Give it a nicer looking font, bordered and shaded footer. But what's nice is, one thing you might want to do is make sure the content is all complete on the HTML side, just raw HTML, and then start adding styling and see what you can do. So have fun with that, play with that. It can be 7 favorite films, it can be 7 favorite video games, 7 favorite books, 7 favorite parks, whatever you want. But TV shows, etc. So play with that and have fun with that. So that's a basic one with straight HTML. Project two, once you figure you've got enough done with that, try downloading that landing page template from startbootstrap.com, the one we were just playing with. Try downloading that and then modify the template to make your 7 favorite films page. Include an image for each of the films, just your favorite screenshot or the official logo or something like that. Change that framing content that's in there already, change it to your own stuff, add your own links, add your own Twitter account and things like that. And then also make sure as you're working on it, shrink and grow that browser window to make sure that it looks good, still looks good at all the different screen sizes as it collapses for that responsive design. So this way you'll get one where you're really starting from scratch with basic HTML, and you'll get another one that's going to be all fancy, and you're going to be doing what frankly a lot of us do in this business, which is taking an existing template and modifying it and making it our own. So as you're getting going in this, here's some final advice as you go. So don't be afraid to try stuff. As I showed you, you can just, as long as you haven't closed and like reopened and gone away and reopened the page, you can undo all the way back to the beginning of your page. So don't worry about breaking stuff. Try stuff, and if it doesn't work, undo it, try again. Remember that really fast cycle of make a change, load it on the page. Make a change, load it on the page. Make a change, load it on the page. Means, and do that for every line you write. Like don't like write 50 lines of code and then see how it works on the page. Write 1 line of code, see how it works on the page. Write 2 lines of code, see how it looks on the page. That's really important. Really short turnaround to make sure you don't forget something at the very beginning and then 50 lines later you've made a mess. So do really quick cycles. That's really important. That's something you have to learn really, really quickly as a developer. It will save your skin. Don't worry about bugs. I don't know if you've been watching this. If you watched my coding stuff, you can see I've been doing this for decades. I was teaching HTML in the mid-90s, and even you notice I was putting in close tags at the beginning and forgetting stuff, and things weren't working, and I had the weird file names and everything. We all make mistakes. Programmers make as many or possibly more mistakes than everyone else. Experienced programmers make as many as newbie programmers. We're just better at catching them and fixing them. And the only way to get better at catching and fixing mistakes is to have lots of experience making mistakes. And an experienced programmer, a master programmer, is simply someone who's made more mistakes than new programmers. So don't be afraid of mistakes. Don't panic with mistakes. Just undo and try things, and once again, change a line here and there and see what happens, and see if you can fix them. And that's how you learn. That's how you build the scar tissue that helps you, or the calluses to help you learn how to play. Another thing, if you're doing this, consider doing this with a friend, because pair programming is one thing that experienced developers do as much as possible. It's a really new thing that's really, it sounds counterintuitive, but you can actually be 2 people working on the same problem is more productive than 2 people working on the problem separately, because there's 2 heads working on the same problem together. And even if you're both new and both don't really know what you're doing about HTML, you've both probably picked up different things from this lesson already. One of you may have noticed how CSS works better. One of you may have noticed how template adjustments work. You're both going to have different strengths and weaknesses. You're both going to think in different ways. Maybe one of you is better at finding pictures off the web. Maybe the other one is better at typing. Work together. Especially if one of you does know a little bit about programming, working with the other, you can help each other. The one can ask questions, the other can give advice. It's really great. So really consider doing this with a friend or whatever. And it's a really, really great way to learn. And it's also kind of a fun thing to do together. Maybe even makes a good date. I don't know. It depends on the kind of date you're having. Don't be afraid to let your text editor help you out. As you saw, it'll do auto-completion for you. There's lots and lots of functionality built into the text editors. Don't be afraid to just go through the menus at the top and just see what all the different options are and try them and see what happens, right? You can't break too much. Worst case scenario, you quit and start again. Not a big deal. And most of all, and I hope it doesn't have to take too much saying, have fun. Programming is a lot of fun. It can be a little frustrating when you're hunting bugs, but at the end of the day, it's so much fun. You're doing stuff, you're making things that change. You're doing, you're making change in the world. It's really awesome. There's that feedback of you type something, you load it in the browser, and oh my God, it works, right? That's the best feeling ever. And so, you sort of end up trying to get that little hit of that great feeling you made something cool. So enjoy yourself, have fun. It can be a great career coding, but it's also just a really good hobby. It's a really fun hobby to sort of play with stuff and build things and then share it with your friends. Speaking of sharing, when you do something, if you finish your pages and you think they're fun, don't be afraid to publish them. Publishing is sometimes a bit of a headache with websites. You get your own custom web domain and all that stuff and get the hosting set up and figure out how to get the files up there and everything. Well, we've got some of that covered. Canadian Web Hosting is working with Lighthouse Labs to help out with this HTML500 thing. If you go to this address, publisherhtml500.com, they'll have a whole bunch of tools to help you stick your site up there on the web, and then you can share the address. Now, it won't be a special custom domain, but it'll be a special address that you can then send to your friends and say, look at this cool thing I made, which is one of the best things to do about programming. You'd be like, check this out, I did this cool thing. And then everyone can talk to each other about their movies and stuff. So anyway, there you go. That's the whirlwind tour of HTML and CSS. I hope you had a lot of fun, and I hope you learned a bunch, and I hope you found it informative and amusing. And I hope you get a chance to come to one of these Lighthouse Labs events in person if you can, especially if you're in Halifax. Come to the ones with me in them and say hi, and let me know how you thought about this program, and look forward to seeing you all somewhere else on the interwebs. All right, thanks.